Today we're going to be talking about the JEP updated changes to hero pools, as well as the June tournament and what to expect.
After that, we'll take a look at some of the roster moves that went down during the break and maybe touch on the path of pro changes just a little bit.
I'm Jane, this is Avast, and welcome to Contested. And welcome to your Thursday episode of Contested. While we've been on the break, there has only been one episode a week, so if you were looking for us on Tuesday, I appreciate the dedication, but didn't have a show. However, it's Thursday, it's 5 p.m. Central, which means that it's time for another episode of Contested. And as per usual, well, we're not in the Frontier Communications studio, despite things opening up, not quite ready for us to go back. Hopefully things stay open so that we can go back in the future, but
maybe next week.
Maybe next week. How are you doing today, Vast?
You know, I'm pretty good. I said we were going over the pre-show. You know, I've just been running. I finally went back to my gym just to see, like, you know, is it safe? And the answer is no, it was not safe. So I was very disappointed in that. So I don't know what I'm going to do exactly in that department, but it's overall pretty good. How about yourself? How are you holding up, you know, in these times?
Good. The puppy is now old enough that he got his parvo shot, so he can go and interact with other dogs and play in the grass. So, you know, been entertaining myself by trying to avoid people as much as possible while you know, taking the dog for walks. It's been pretty good. It's been passing the days, we'll say that.
There's like everyone in chat is saying that there's a bug on my camera, but it's not a bug. It's like the fabric is pushing up against the peg. You see?
It's because you're backlit. You've got a light on behind the screen.
No, I don't.
I can do that too.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the backlit of seeing the impression? Okay.
Yeah, mine can do it too. It's like,
yeah, but for some reason mine is so apparent. I don't know why. Okay, see, there's yours popping up. Well, everyone, you have to ignore it. Okay, ignore it. Ignore. Has Jane? I don't know what's happening to Jane. Just ignore it for now.
We're just doing a live demonstration. That's all.
Yeah, that's it. This is structurally integral to the backdrop, so we can't get rid of it.
It's always funny asking if Avast to get up when his backdrop is here because he has to like play leapfrog over his computer and everything.
Yeah, because the only way it gets in frame properly is if I like scooch it up so far that I have to like jump over my PC to get into the chair.
It's like locking yourself into that. You know, did you watch the SpaceX launch where they have to like get into the capsule?
I saw clips here and there, but I didn't actually watch the full thing, which is a shame because it's super cool and it's like super cool. But like, I just didn't actually watch all of it. So such is life. But that's SpaceX, Jane. We've had enough rambling about pegs and space travel, but we actually have to talk about Overwatch here on the Overwatch show at some point, if you can believe it.
Do we really though? Can we just go back to the pre-show?
We technically don't have to, but should we?
Should we?
Should
Probably
we though?
Should.
Yeah, we probably should at some point.
Well, the first thing on the schedule, how many changes are we up to on hero pools? I don't even know.
I think, didn't we say we were going to create like potentially we were going to have we had a production meeting of like us creating a collage of like, of us talking about changes for like the Overwatch League hero pools and the ranked hero pools. Like it's been the fourth time now, right?
I mean, fourth is at minimum. So for those of you guys who live under a rock and only get your content from us, of course, we are not fake news. We are the realest of news, and we cover it just so you don't have to pay attention to any other news source. The June tournament is going to be coming back, and the format is 3 weeks of qualifiers leading up to a 1 week of tournament play. Now, a lot of the commentary that we were talking about around the hero pools was that the 1 week was kind of too short for anybody to do kind of any iterative work on the compositions that are come up with. And one of the things that we actually talked about in the last discussion that we had on hero pools is that we thought that 2 weeks would be a pretty good compromise, because in the first week, the teams that were best at adapting would have a strong showing. And then in the second week of that hero pool, the teams who were actually better at kind of iterating on things or perfecting them would have a stronger advantage during that second week. And voila, it's actually, that's decided what the Overwatch League is going to be doing. So they're having the first 2 weeks of the qualifiers being with hero pools, and there are going to be bans. And then in the last week of qualifiers, plus the actual week of the tournament, there's going to be no hero bans at all. So, which has the same effect, and we've talked about this before, where when you go from having hero bans to not having hero bans, even though all of the characters are playable, it still has the effect of changing up the meta. So, you know, for argument's sake, it is basically the same. as having hero pools. So that's pretty cool. And then the final most important change about the hero pools is, of course, that they are removing them entirely from ranked play. So it's only going to be an Overwatch League thingy.
Now, before we get into both of those two big changes really quick, we also have a very important popping off, but this time it's a community popping off presented by Jack in the Box, because we have a very, very big clip here from the GOATS show match of the Avast sub-tournament. And it is actually going to be Joffrey from Assigned Chads at Birth, the team captain. It was all the captains here in the sub-tournament. We had some great names. And Joffrey is on the Reinhardt and goes for this long flank in the GOATS show match here as the doors are being held. And drops a 5-man, maybe even a 6-man shatter, I believe, here at the spawn doors, cleaning everyone up here in the GOATS show match. And you have to believe that this is why GOATS is honest. This is why GOATS is incredibly honest. Is because of this clip right here from Joffrey putting all the members on the ground. That's a good popping off there. You know, we asked for some community clips, and I think the sub-tournament gave a great addition to those community clips, and also in particular GOATS show mats during the sub-tournament.
You're not gonna. Is that the only clip you have for today's popping off?
No, we just chose one.
You're not gonna show the OA?
No, we're not gonna show the OA. Now, someone did. We'll save that for the After Dark, says our producer in our ears. We'll do a contested After Dark where we pick all the clips that people take out of context, and we'll show them there of Jane and myself, and then we'll drop like 20 seconds of OA.
I'm not sure we can get that one sponsored by Jack in the Box, but we'll do it anyway. Perfect.
Who is producing? Our boss, aka the big man in charge, Mike Botkin himself. You guys can't hear him, you can't see him, but he's talking to us. He's a very big guy. But that was the popping off presented by Jack in the Box. Now we can go back.
I jumped for the gun. Point. I did it.
But it's okay because we're setting up.
Yeah, I explained it. Now we get to talk about it. So the last thing that I said was that the hero pools are no longer going to be in ranked. And I think this is probably the thing that is going to have the largest amount of, I suppose, question marks surrounding it. Because again, one of the primary reasons that hero pools were introduced into rank was so that pro players could actually practice, on their own. When they queue up for rank, they're practicing in an environment more similar to what they're actually going to be having in the league. And, at first we had hero pools for everyone. And then because they wanted to maintain that compromise, they had it where it was just Masters players, 3,500 and up. And now in this most recent change, they're like, nothing. So let's start there, Avast. What do you think about the hero pools being removed entirely from ranked play?
I mean, I think for rank, there's like a twofold problem, because, and we've talked at this point. We have talked about as he try to bring the backdrop up. I've given up. I can't even bring it up anymore. But I think that it's like this weird problem that we continue to have, right? Where like we understand that there's a necessity for hero pools generally, especially at the high levels, like a high, low, and also at the Overwatch League level. Like there's a necessity for hero pools because the reality is we sort of settle into a meta, and otherwise, like there are certain heroes that probably never get rotated out, or even like there's really no way to really increase innovation at all without some sort of artificial pushing, which we've seen at the high. But then also at the set on the other side, ranked sort of just plays wherever they want anyways. Like there is no actual meta within ranked. Yeah. Like Genji, back when we were still basing the Overwatch League hero pools off of ranked hero pools, Genji was getting banned because people wouldn't stop playing Genji in ranked, even though that hero is terrible. That hero is so bad. Like even with some buffs coming in, I still don't know if Genji is going to be like even usable still at any point because of all the problems that are centered around Genji's kit, and especially like the ult. So I just don't like it. Overall, I'm pretty mixed on the whole, like, well, here's hero pools, but actually never mind. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I'm okay with all the changes because it makes it's still continuous. And at least for ranked, not having hero pools is not the end of the world because people will play whatever they want anyways. Now, for Overwatch League, I'd be like, but because they're still keeping a system in place there, I'm like, okay, I'm fine with it. It's probably the best compromise we can have because overall, people still just always they want to put out non sequiturs, Jane, of like, well, if Blizzard just had more heroes and balanced the game, and we've addressed that point too. Like, obviously, like that needs to happen. That's the base problem, but we don't have those fixes yet. I can't just walk on to Jeff Kaplan and slap around a little bit. Like, where are the heroes, Jeff? Where are they?
Just give them to us. Heroes.
Just give them to us, Jeff.
More heroes.
And like, obviously that's what we need, but we don't have it yet. So our next best solution is we have to work within like some sort of system that we can implement that will actually be able to fix some of the core issues. And hero pools is probably that solution. So overall, in summary, I'm okay with it. I'm okaja, as they say.
And I think that the impact that hero pools has on the ranked experience is going a little bit more into the kind of encroaching on the casual player's enjoyment. Like if you do have somebody who's primarily a one trick or really like specializing in one hero, not playing for a week, that's probably not going to be the worst thing in the world. But if you're really kind of removing a person's enjoyment, even if it's a very small percentage of your player base for 2 weeks, that could definitely be too much of an imposition onto the ranked player base, even for the people who don't play like professionally or a hardcore kind of group. That's something that you don't really want to do as a developer, I assume. Now, the one thing that we don't know, and I'd be really interested to kind of hear, is how much input they actually got from the professional players, because a lot of the pro players and a lot of the commentary around the fact that the pros wanted to practice in ranked was not universal. Sinatra was actually one of the individuals who, during his departure, Twitlonger, mentioned hero pools in ranked as being one of the things that kind of really removed a lot of the enjoyment, or at least could have been one of the reasons that he started to fall in love or fall out of love with Overwatch. So, the pros themselves, you can have like one or two pros have some opinions and have some pretty public opinions, and that gets used as the community as kind of like proof that this is the ultimate right and the ultimate truth. But, the pros themselves even have quite a diverse opinion. So we've seen pros like Sinatra say, to the contrary. And I do wonder, if Team 4 Blizzard decided to kind of talk to them more closely about this, or if they're just like, nope, we are the arbiters of truth, and this is how it will be.
Yeah, and it's very important as well that we had talked about this once again in this collage of times we've talked about hero pools and the changes to rank so many times now that it's starting to slip my mind. But the reality is too is that if we swap to a 2-week hero pool system, and this has been brought up by GMs and by coaches and by us, is that if you have 2 weeks of a hero pool, what if someone's signature hero is banned for 2 weeks and now they can't even play it in ranked at all, right? Like they can't go and practice anything. So the reality is you sort of have to have, if you're going to move to a 2-week system, which is once again a downside to having a hero pool system, but also a necessity, is that you simply must not have pools at all in ranked, or else people are entirely pieced out of the game. They just can't play. They just can't play the game at all, even in the ranked system, because their hero is gone and is unavailable. And obviously one tricks fall under that spectrum too. And that's much more of like a casual community problem than it is more than a professional community problem. But once again, there's nothing illegal about one tricking. If it's even if it's, there's nothing illegal, there's no Overwatch rules, cut into the stone saying that you may not one trick. Is it ideal? No, but that's how it's going to work out.
You paid your $40, you can play the game the way you want to play the game.
Yeah, it is what it is. So overall, I think positive changes all around, because even with all the problems with hero pools, making them longer really solves a lot of the issues based around the system. Yeah. And then whatever else may arrive, be derivative of that, I think is going to be a lesser problem than the actual main issue, which was we are being worked to the bone to learn the meta each week and playing like 8 hours of scrims and like 4 hours of archery, which also I don't think was the right way to do it. I think that was working hard and not smart.
Yeah,
and we've talked to
a lot of
coaches
people
that did it smart.
Yes, yeah, we absolutely have. I'm very much interested in this June tournament. I think that it's likely that this June tournament is going to be the one that I watch the most out of all of the Overwatch so far that we've seen this year. Of course, I got known within the Overwatch community initially for doing extremely long, extremely thorough, to the point of probably overkill, analysis on a lot of these games. And that was back when the teams actually put in a lot more work into strategy and tactics of these compositions, because the best composition was always solved. It was always known, to a point, barring like revolutionary new discoveries like goats. But it was always really fun to kind of look at the differences and the little adaptations that teams made from match to match. So I'm really hoping that these kind of like second week matches, which are going to happen, of course, week 2 during the qualifiers, and then most importantly, the tournament itself. I feel like now we can have data points that are, we have 2 data points. So even if it's just 2 data points, we can at least have a trend between them. We can say like, the teams are doing that this week, and how are they going to perform next week, sort of thing. It's not like every single week is its own completely unique ecosystem. And another problem with kind of trying to do power rankings or predicting where teams lie is that you could have teams records, but then you look back and you trying to figure out like where teams are lying, how good they are.
What meta were they playing in at all?
What were they playing?
Because one meta they'd be great, the next meta they just crater.
And like the Overwatch League schedule page, like Liquipedia over GG, like none of those websites track what the hero pools were for the week. That looking through results, I've got like spreadsheets on all my monitors, be like looking like somebody out of a conspiracy theory, like putting pins and red string into my monitors, be like, I see the Matrix. But no, I'm really looking forward to kind of just having that 2 weeks, so I can at least view it as kind of like a microcosm of seeing trends, because I think all of the like really interesting stuff from the development of the strategy and tactics, all of that development occurred in scrims, and we never got to see it. So that's kind of an unfortunate thing, and I hope that we do get to see more of that adaptation. And I think one of the most fascinating things for me to look at is kind of, will teams have a higher win rate in the first week of the hero pool or the second week? And it'll be interesting to see if what we've been saying all along about there being teams that are better adapting, rather teams that are better at perfecting, whether that bimodal distribution actually exists, or if we've just been blowing smoke up our own asses the whole year, and that no, all teams are basically, a good team is good regardless of the situation, a bad team is bad regardless of the situation.
Yeah, I'm pretty firmly in the camp still of like a good team is good and a bad team is bad, but there are some outliers. I think Seoul is probably like the most obvious outlier generally, where they just show up and they're like, we're really, really good at playing the Fortress comp, but outside of the Fortress comp, we start to struggle a little bit. Though they actually did show some improvements towards the end. I think they've shown a lot of improvements. So even so, they're showing that arc of improvement over time, which is sort of trying to show that they are still a good team. And I think that probably is going to hold true for the most part. I think the meta stuff was a lot bigger issue in the beginning of the season. If we had just kept the whole system, like if we made no changes at all, like if Jeff had heard the cries of the coaches and players, they're like, help us, Jeff, help us. And Jeff's like, fuck them kids. Like, and just like, doesn't even like, just says nothing. There's my F-bomb for the episode.
There's your one.
There's my one. And just did nothing to the system. I think we actually still would have seen an evolution of like, as the season progressed, of teams would have gotten better, and the good teams still would have been at the top and the bad teams would have been at the bottom overall, no matter the meta. But now we don't really have to worry about it, and I was about to get really wacky with power rankings too, Jane. I was about to just go completely random. I had almost given up entirely. I was like, I'm just gonna do entirely like pachinko based like power ranking. I'm gonna draw like Uno cards and like do the draw fours. Like, I was just about to give up, but now I actually have to sort of care again about power rankings.
Imagine actually caring about power rankings. Poor Johnny having to like pretend like he knows anything. Like, imagine Johnny having to week after week pretending that he can predict the future in the absolute chaos that is so many things affecting power rankings.
It's a rough one.
And then recently, John Spector also went on like a 2-hour mega episode of Plat Chat, which was the format they used more or less to kind of talk about the future of the Overwatch League as well, which, out of all of the changes that we've seen, and we have seen quite a few changes, of course, despite the last 6 months feeling like 6 years, we started this year with the intent to do a lot of homestands, quite a lot of traveling, almost completely offline play in terms of the actual lands themselves. And now we're starting to see how they've adapted through this pandemic with all the quarantines and all the shutdowns. And one of the things that John Spector was talking about is that the format and how they think they're going to approach the tournaments next year is changing, that they are considering keeping what we have right now for this June tournament more long-term, with next year being a little bit more hybrid, having this nice combination of qualifiers, some which will occur online, and then actually having the homestands or the playoff tournaments happening in person. What do you think about this, Avast?
I mean, overall, the less amount of regular season games, the better, is sort of my view on it. I know I've had to fight an eternal crusade of people like, give me regular season or give me death. Like, everyone's like, I don't want to have to chew my food, just nutrient paste directly to my stomach. I don't want to eat. I just want it pumped into me. Like, this is like, but overall, I would say that it's a good change. I think the regular season, and we've already had it within Activision Blizzard ecosystems, right? Like, and there are people pushing for the beginning, even people that have exited the scene, like Monte Cristo, or ones that are currently within it, like ourselves, or just coaches in general that have really been pushing for a tournament style system. And I think it's much more engaging. I think it fits with the hero pool system a lot better too, especially if they want to unlock hero pools. One downside, though, I will say that leads into this tournament style system and changing the hero pools is now there's going to be less pressure on teams to learn and to sort of burn out themselves to learn the meta quickly, but also there likely will be a little bit less innovation, I think, because we only have one hero pool because it's 2 weeks on a single hero pool. Yeah. And then the final weeks, it's just no hero pool for the playoffs, you know? Yes. So I actually think there's going to be a lot less push for teams to sort of figure out what is actually good. But in return, they've also had this initial experimenting in the beginning where we sort of had the hell weeks of like everyone learning everything at the beginning. So maybe it won't be as much of an issue, but I do think that is something that we need to keep an eye out because if we start seeing comps get less and less diverse as we go on, it is 100%, I think, a byproduct of there being less overall pools to be played. But still, yeah, I'd rather players and coaches have a healthier lifestyle as opposed to me just seeing even more diversity necessarily, right?
I've said it once, I've said it a million times, but just because the composition doesn't change doesn't mean that we don't have diversity in tactics, strategy, execution, that sort of thing. So you know, you'll have people who like seeing diversity of compositions, see diversity of compositions in the first week. You'll see the people who like, you know, the little tiny things like the little tiny details. You'll see those in the later weeks. And as long as Blizzard does keep with their promise to do this more rapid iteration on the balancing, which so far with all evidence showing that they are going to be following through and that it wasn't just empty words, you know, the experimental card has seen quite a few changes. And as long as between these tournaments, we are seeing those like consistent balancing patches. The second half of these tournaments are going to be different. And you even saw the effect of these hero pools applying after hero pools had been removed because teams more like went to what they were comfortable with, right? Yeah. And then there is going to be this momentum where if you play something that you're comfortable with, like, you know, if you play Tracer during hero pools, either out of necessity or comfort, right? And then you go to a no hero pool system where, you know, the Tracer composition is at least viable, if it's not like, you know, the most theoretically powerful composition. If you're better at executing, you know, a slightly less optimal composition, you're going to stick with that. So I think this combination of hero pools and no hero pools, even though every single tournament is going to have a no hero pool section on it, I think that there's enough other factors between balancing, you know, and momentum of the actual decisions that the teams make and how they're playing that we will still see the diversity. It might change its form, but I definitely think it's still going to be there.
Yeah, like the initial push is the very important part for that. And, you know, speaking of Tracer, it might be very likely for the first 2 weeks of this returning hero pool that we might not see too much Tracer because we have Echo, Sombra, Diva, Brigida as the bans for the first 2 weeks. Yes. For the hero pool bans. And we've entered this weird Twilight Zone universe where Brigida is sometimes seen as like a necessity to even run dive occasionally.
It's just the funniest reversal ever. Like,
which I do think isn't required.
Guess we're not playing dive anymore.
If you had told anyone like a year ago that you need Brigida to play Tracer, people would have like to pick up their pitchforks and their torches and carried you out to the streets and be like, what are you talking about, you madman? But I will say that we've also saw that teams have managed to push Tracer even without Brigida and into Brigidas. Like Florida played their very singular comp without Brigida. They really weren't playing that much Brigida. They were playing a fairly good amount of it, but not Brigida all the time and still running Yaki on the Tracer. So it is possible to still see Tracer be played, but we might see a shift downwards without Brigida, which is funny. Yes. It also guarantees that Double Shield is probably going to be played exclusively. Exactly, I think now that Diva's banned, it's going to be Double Shield, I think.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other composition that we've seen, hero pools or otherwise, that says that the dominant composition will be anything other than Double Shield. But now that both of us have said that, the hero pool or Double Shield's going to be the worst composition there is, and something brand new will return. And
we'll get proven wrong. They'll release a sudden tank hero, right? Jeff will finally be like, we'll release a new tank hero just for that, just to prove you wrong.
It's just a hero that like you press E, 5-second cooldown, deletes all shields. Done.
Perfect. The EMP.
Totally balanced. 5-second EMP.
That'll be his name. But we're still running into that problem, right? Of like when we ban a tank, we're sort of locked into one particular style of
Yes.
composition because we don't have a tank available, and it's sort of also the same with support. So it is what it is. But overall, I think positive changes going towards a tournament style format. I think the teams all enjoy it a lot more. I don't think any Overwatch League team sat there was really excited about just playing regular season games. Like no team ever is excited about regular season, and also as like a motivational tool for players and even for coaches at times. When the season drags on, there is something to be said about having much more impactful games, especially even if they're just like seeding games. And it really drives you to be much more invested. And obviously you should say like, well, everyone should be invested all the time anyways. It's like, yes,
you could say that.
Energy only carries you so long, especially if we're in like very weird circumstances like everyone is now, where everyone's just playing from home. Like we're not even in our practice facilities anymore. Like no one is. Changes everything. Changes it all. And there it is. Bringing up our one of our favorite phrases of the day. I mean, how do you feel like if you were to see, like, let's say you were a coach like this year, as opposed to now being a content creator, how would you feel as a coach moving from a regular season format to a tournament style format? Do you think that would make your job easier? Would it make it harder? Would it make it the same? Like, would your motivation be up or be down? Like, how do you think a team would respond from like a coaching structure style and even from a team style?
I think anytime you have kind of short-term and achievable goals, you can use them as kind of like milestones for improvement. Having like a long slog grind, it can feel like nothing's changing. There's no variety, or, ups and downs or anything like that. And having these kind of official matches, the official matches are like really where you can figure out things that, if you have, it's in the same way that scrims are to regular games are to playoff games, where you don't try as hard in scrims because it's not real. There's lower stakes. In an official, if it's a regular season match, you try a bit harder because it matters, but it's not like the end of the world. When you're in a single elimination bracket tournament, everything matters. The stakes are huge. It's like, this is truly an accurate reflection of who you are as a team. You can't make excuses for it. On a regular season, you can be like, oh, we're sick, or we didn't read the meta right. Those excuses don't fly in a playoff match, because it's just like the stakes are higher. It's much more serious, and your team is expected to perform because you are professionals. So it gives you kind of like little flagpoles that you can plant to the ground, and you can have an accurate reflection about like where you are and what you're capable of. Sort of thing. And then also having those short-term goals as somebody who like works really hard. If you have, there's an acronym for this. It's like VAPID versus SMART goals. I think it is like literally SMART goals, but
VAPID.
So yeah, this is a really fun thing for people who struggle with motivation. I'll look it up. SMART versus VAPID.
Well, I'm just, isn't it vapid?
Isn't it VAPID?
I don't think so. I think you're confusing vape. Like you're bringing over the vape pronunciation into
right.
that word.
Yeah, it is.
So
vapid.
Don't worry, because I've made that mistake many a times with many different words.
As long as I'm not segueing between different topics, I mean, I'm gonna be good.
I'm just saying, I'm just saving you, because if you do this in front of a Zoomers, and you say vapid, everyone's gonna vape nation you. They're doing it right now in chat. They're vape nation.
Chat. Is it? How do you pronounce vapid? Is it vapid or vapid? Just type which one you prefer.
Someone just pronounced, Echo Nas says it's pronounced vapid and just spelled out the word. Thank you.
Yeah, that's huge. It's huge.
Very helpful.
Okay, so the difference between SMART and VAPID is like SMART stands for specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-defined. And then VAPID is like vague, amorphous, pie in the sky, irrelevant, and delayed. So what I'm trying to say is that if you can set goals on a short-term scale, which your team can try and achieve, and then immediately reflect on your performance and go forward with that. It's a lot harder to do when kind of like everything just, like the word amorphous is literally in this mnemonic. Like when the entire season is just like this amorphous blob of regular season games, it is a lot harder to make like improvements that seem kind of in a progression. That's what I'm saying. So yeah,
it sounds like you're really just a huge fan of regular season games, like myself.
No.
No. You're also not going to head over to the nutrient pump afterwards, so you don't have to chew your food. You're not going to see you over there with all the regular season fans.
I think one of the frustrating things is that, I talked about this this is one of the reasons that very early on that I became a short seller of the New York Excelsior, which, by the way, the fact that we're seeing headlines like Will Hoxel save the New York Excelsior, it's like, you're finally admitting that the New York Excelsior needs saving. But, like one of the things that really annoys me when I'm watching a game is like I like to. It's like watching, fighting games are pretty big for this, where you can usually see a person's personality bleed through in their playstyle. How hard they're trying or things like this. And nothing bothers me more than watching a professional player who's apathetic. You see this in teams in like the National Hockey League or something, which has a regular season where at a certain point you are mathematically eliminated from contention, right? Those players, when they skate up and go out on the ice, they don't care, and it shows through in their play style. And that's like the last thing that I enjoy watching. If a pro doesn't care about what he's doing, why do I care about what he's doing? So like the higher the stakes can be, so that the players can care, so that I can invest in the players caring in the result, it makes the world go round.
The better it is. And also, I just wanted to see like, because I do find it interesting that you bring up the Haskell saving New York point, because I went and actually looked at the record, because also I don't disagree with your point. It's just, but it's still funny because New York is still 10-3 right now.
They are,
and top 4 in the league.
They are. This is why it's so hard to convince people. And New York fans will just be like hands on the ears and be like la 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 10-3, la 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 10-3.
Well, it's always. I feel like New York has to be treated like it's like a gifted and talented kid. Like this is really gonna resonate.
This is exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's really gonna resonate with all of you smart slackers out there, where like your mom in your school was like, this guy reads a lot of books, or girl, or whoever you may be, reads a lot of books. Like they should go into the gifted and talented program. They're progressing very quickly through school. Then you get to college and you just suck ass because you don't know how to study. You don't know how to do anything. That's New York. That is New York.
So naturally talented, you have never had to work hard before.
That's exactly what New York might be. Is like we really don't know. Like they should be pretty good. They should be better than how they.
They should be better. I think that was like it's not like I was ever saying New York is bad. Is that they should be better. They should be a team that is giving San Francisco Shock a run for their money. They should try and be like a paragon, like these unbeatable champions that can just really dominate other teams. And instead, like they look lazy and apathetic in their play, and they do just enough to win. They're like the procrastinator. They don't procrastinate because of any other reason other than the fact that they know they can do the job in 30 minutes, and people think they spent a week on it. It's like, I could do it last minute, so why would I do anything but? Like, it's so angering watching you. It's like, you guys could be the greats.
I do think there are some stylistic problems with them, and that can lead into our next topic of discussion. Is we've had a lot of off-season moves, or not off-season, but I guess mid-season break.
Being one of them. Yeah,
Hawksville being one of them. Like we've had a decent amount of moves happen during this break. It's not off-season, but mid-season. Haskell being obviously number one, and we were already talking about New York, so I guess we'll continue to talk about New York because they also added Mandu. I'm not quite sure.
One of those. One of those. I'm going with Mandu. Google that one. So
I'm going with Mandu. Until someone's going to tell me the correct pronunciation.
I have a vapid understanding of the pronunciation of Mandu.
Vapid. Thank you, Silver Sound. Now this is the vapid. It seems like I'm going to go with Mandu here. But the purpose here is that this isn't a mid-season edition. Mandu is already on the roster. They had them there, but now he is old enough to play. And discussion I've actually seen pop up fairly frequently, not just around Haskell, but also around Mandu, is do these players replace your starters? Do they currently replace New York starters, which would be, Anamo, and then on Haskell's side, it would probably be Who Are You or Libero. It'd be one of those two players, because technically New York has like three flex support players. I don't know where the L went. I don't take L's.
Ran away.
That's why I don't take L's. So I have no L's. But they have like three flex support players between Who Are You, Libero, and now Haskell. So it is a pretty interesting like DPS lineup for them. But I will think that like for Haskell, we'll probably see him come in, especially for Who Are You, because I'm biased. I've been on the anti Who Are You train for a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm at the leader of that train. I am the engineer leading that locomotive. That's just who I am. You can't stop me. But such is life. But for Anamo and Mandu, it's a lot tougher of an equation, I think, because Mandu is very, very aggressive. It was one of the better main supports. Some people have even argued the best main support in Contenders Korea when he was playing alongside like Lee Jae-gong. And so there is something to be said about like where do they move forward from here. And I do think that Anamo offers a lot more flexibility than that we're gonna have to see Mandu like put out there, because Anamo can play a lot of different heroes, not just Lucio. Even if he's not the most aggressive Lucio player and he's not the most playmaker Lucio player, which is sort of the style of Lucio right now, and you're sort of expecting your Lucios to get a lot of value, i.e. like FD God, Moth, Slime, etc. as we go down the list, and Li Jigong, like, we're expecting very playmaker Lucios, and Anamo really hasn't been that Lucio player at all. But he is very flexible, and he's also plays pretty safe for the most part. He does get picked a decent amount, but he does play pretty safe. And is a relatively balanced player. While Mandu is just like balls to the wall. I'm going in nonstop, like aggression that we've seen from main supports. And there's no guarantee that he is as flexible, because I haven't seen. I really don't know how flexible he might be. And it's like a tough stylistic difference to choose for New York. And once again, does it even save them, right? Because I don't even know if that would really necessarily, I think it gives them a strength. But the problems that you've discussed and I discussed have really doesn't feel like necessarily that it's the roster's weak. Now, I will say Haskell coming in, great. Who are you? Sure. Anything not on Genji? Absolute, because that hero is essentially defunct. It is like an old Magic the Gathering card. It is a legacy hero. It's no longer in the rotation. I mean, we'll see moving forward, but like, and more importantly, don't bench Libero too. Oh my God, do not bench Libero. I'm so tired of Libero being benched on that team. Yeah. Please, God. But do you think any of those additions will really change the problems we've seen in New York?
Unfortunately, I have to plead the fifth on a lot of this. Before Mondo was actually signed to the New York Excelsior, I didn't even know he existed. So you brought it up last week. There it is. You brought it up last week, and of course carried the conversation on that one because you have a much deeper understanding of the Korean contenders scene than I do. But additionally, the matches that we saw during the May Melee, of course, despite my meme levels amount of enthusiasm for the Chengdu Hunters, they almost beat the New York Excelsior. Like, they took them 5 games, and after New York Excelsior actually went on to the next round, they just got utterly stepped on by the Shanghai Dragons. Shanghai Dragons were like, eek, and then just like rubbed their heel in, and the New York Excelsior were no more. So I didn't actually watch any of the New York Excelsior's games during the May Melee tournament. They didn't perform very well. So I don't have a very updated understanding of New York Excelsior in terms of how they're going to perform with these changes, unfortunately.
So, and honestly, I tend to, like, even though I might have know the players a little bit more, I actually just need to see how they perform, because I really feel like these are issues that are going to be shored up by these roster additions. Mm-hmm. But it's all about how they play together and not about the individual. Like, at this point, we need to get past the narrative of just like only looking at players, and especially for teams that are already good. New York is already good. It doesn't even matter what players they enter and exit for the most part, unless they just cut the whole team, i.e. Titan style, right? It's like they're going to be good. It's now much more an issue of coaching structure and learning team cohesion, I feel, and motivation even, than it is players, I feel, a lot of the time.
Absolutely. That was going to be the one thing that I was going to bring up, is that, like, motivation and communication are probably like the 2 biggest things. If a player is slumping mentally or just not performing for whatever reason, bringing somebody else who's chomping at the bit to really show off or something like that could definitely help light a spark, change the team culture itself. It's not like it's unheard of for teams to acquire players specifically for trying to alter the culture internally of a team. And if that's the reason for the pickup, you're almost never going to hear that listed publicly. In addition, like, Hoxel is an extremely aggressive caller. He shot calls quite a bit. So I'm not sure what currently they have as a team leader structure for New York. They have quite a few people who are very capable of that. Animo, Sabiolbi, Mono, all very smart players who definitely could lead. So I'm not sure what kind of communication structure they are leading on the team. But I think that it would be, you're whatever the play style is, whoever's responsible for the current culture, you don't take a player like Hoxel and put him into an environment like that and assume that the culture is going to stay the same. So assuming that Hoxel is, coming at this at the same sort of fire and ferocity that a rookie like Mondu definitely will in order to prove himself, this definitely could internally light a fire under the team to try and really, Hoxel has experienced being a champion, and he probably wants to experience that again. And if he's put in a squad where that's possible, there's no reason that they don't try and, up their game a little bit and really perform, swing at the level that they're capable of.
Or it could plummet them, it could do the inverse, where you bring someone good in and everyone gets really pissy, and then they start getting mad at each other, like, it could go the opposite. We'll just have to see exactly how the team culture fits with that. And also moving on to the next team and talking very specifically about team culture is the Justice. The Justice they already added Jonu on our last episode that we were talking about. They confirmed Jonu. Now they've confirmed added Stitch as a permanent player to their edition. And so they've added 2 X-Titans players. There's rumors they might try to get other players, but obviously nothing concrete, nothing to really talk about there at the time of like saying like, oh, this would be whatever. I do think that I will throw out one of the players that people thought was really interesting, but wouldn't make any sense would be Myungbong, because yeah, great. Myungbong I think would be huge for Justice, but why would why would he leave Bach? Now I've said that before, right? So who knows? But overall, good additions to Justice. I think Jonu. It is a shame because I think Envytv. I never thought Envytv currently with Justice was like the best off-tank player, but also he was performing reasonably well. And in addition to that, it's hard to look really good for the most part on bad Overwatching teams.
Yes.
And when the competition's so high, and maybe if your team culture is taking a pounding as well, and your spirits are low, it's gonna be really hard to look like the best player on a team, especially as a tank player. So I do think that it's a shame that Envytv is out, and it was a really unfortunate coincidence too that they released like a player spotlight video on Envytv right after he left the league. A little bit unlucky timing.
Yeah. And it's like Envytv doesn't seem to be. I watched his stream after he was released. He's definitely interested in getting back in the team, sort of thing. But Lulsish, by the way, still on the team.
But surely must be gone soon. I would think surely must be gone soon. Like still we don't actually know. They said they've committed to making sure his visa process is finished, but like it just doesn't make any sense. If I'm being honest, like I'm also on the leading the dual locomotive train of the anti Who Are You and the anti Roar train. I'm on both those trains. I'm straddling them like this. I'm like with the Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man where he does the train things. Like, I think that's me, but with the trains of saying I don't like these players on their current rosters.
There are a few players in the Overwatch League who I have always like struggled to really find a very firm opinion on their playing ability, and Roar is absolutely one of those. It's kind of like sometimes he looks really good, sometimes he looks like a potato. I have no. Another one of the players that I actually really struggle to get an opinion on is Void. So like,
I mean, John Galt, the ex-head coach of the Justice, literally just said Roar does not play the game outside of scrims. Okay, this isn't even about like. This leads into a history for me of things I've heard and things like that, of me being very anti-Roar currently in his current iteration. It's not that Roar is a bad player. I don't think Roar is a bad player. In fact, it's almost incredible that Roar has been able to put up almost any performance with literally not touching the game ever outside of likely 4 hours of scrims a day, maybe 6 max.
Yeah,
like compared to some people
that's the standard in other esports like Counter-Strike. Yeah, only plays.
Yeah, but also those guys have been playing an iteration of their game for 20 years now.
Yeah.
So like at this point, it's as natural as breathing. I also think Counter-Strike is like, it's not that it's easier, because that's not correct. There's definitely, it's a much more linear skill set than Overwatch, I think, where it's a lot harder to reproduce, especially like when you're like a tank player, things like that. Some of the skills you need without constant practice, comparatively, I feel, to some of the other games where it's a lot more ingrained in your memory and easier to replicate.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's my bullshit PhD on esports bioscience.
That's what your PhD is in.
That's my PhD is in that one. But
yeah,
I feel like, didn't John Galt already know that from Gladstone? Yes, he probably did. Which is also why I struggle, why I was initially skeptical of the roster move to begin with, of why John Galt was doing this. But, I'm not the head coach of Justice, and nor the ex-head coach of Justice.
Neither is John anymore.
So. Neither is John Galt. So, I mean, who knows, right?
We haven't actually explicitly mentioned it this episode, but John Galt did, as far as we can tell, voluntarily leave the Washington Justice to pursue education. So we were talking about this on last week's episode. I said that I didn't think John spoke Korean, and then chat was like, pretty sure he does. Message John, he doesn't speak Korean, so I was right. Haha, chat. But yes, he did depart the Washington Justice. So that was kind of like the last obstacle that we saw between the Washington Justice current state and them going like just full 100% confirmed Korean. So that did go through. And we're not sure if they're just going to promote one of their assistant coaches to the head coach position, because they do have very competent assistant coaches in the form of Supreme and Wiz.
Yep. Wiz.
Got that one.
Yeah.
So they don't really even need to pick up a head coach. They could just promote one of their very competent assistant coaches to run the team. But yeah, Washington Justice confirmed 100% Korean.
Which is obviously, looking at it from the outside, like makes the most sense. The direction. If you're doing badly, just go full Korean for a head.
Just go full Korean.
Which isn't a point. isn't
Oh, sorry, was that too soon?
That was maybe a little, I mean, not really actually, because I guess that leads into our next point, right? Because speaking of Toronto, Jay, the GM of the Toronto Defiant, has renounced his retirement from esports in its entirety. It's not just done with Overwatch. It's just, I'm done with esports. I'm sick of you guys. Peace out. And he's left the team now.
This is a big one too, because I'm not sure how well known Jay is kind of like in the larger Overwatch community, but Jay was very well connected, extremely enthusiastic, motivated, very competent, hard worker. I have nothing but great things to say about Jay, and I think that he definitely did great work for Toronto as an organization. So for him to depart, I can only assume that it was for like personal reasons. Now, I didn't actually read his departure letter in full, but that is absolutely a big loss for the Toronto Defiant. I would definitely rate Jay as probably one of the best GMs in terms of the ones that I personally knew. So yeah, like that is a big departure. Despite Toronto not having success, it's that it doesn't mean that the entire organization is terrible.
Yeah, it is an interconnectivity, right? Like you can be a good GM, but not necessarily get results from your team. Though you could argue like a lot of different where the GM falls into that, but without specific knowledge of how the team operates, you don't really know how much the GM is necessarily affecting those results, right? And like, sure, Toronto didn't get results, but they did build an incredibly successful, huge fan base now this season, even if they're not great still. And that sort of carried Houston for now 3 years. So like you can argue like where it falls in there. I mean, overall, he's also an esports veteran, been around for a while. Pretty professional guy. Like I like Jay too. It's unlucky that we didn't get to see more from him. So, and it's weird because everything I'd heard was pointing towards very recently that he was continuing in Overwatch League, and then he's like, "No, actually, I'm done. I'm out of esports entirely." Yeah, which is a pretty interesting move. But overall, it's his life. He's got other stuff that he's got going on.
Jay would be a great guy to get on this show and just have him tell stories about the Overwatch League for like 2 hours straight. That would be fun.
Yeah, he would be a great guy to talk to overall about some of the early things. And also, just as a warning to everyone in chat, it just goes to show you that esports, despite being a job that a lot of people want to have, it is sometimes something you sell your soul to, and that you spend a lot of time and a lot of energy, and it can crush you. It can crush you sometimes. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily Jay, but it sounded like he was feeling pretty tired of the scene from his because I read his tweet longer. He was feeling tired of the whole grind and so that's very likely he's just like, I can go do normal, I can do normal wagey stuff and not esports stuff.
Esports is one of those. Esports is 100% a passion industry. You get paid less to work harder. Like if you can take,
especially on like the competitive side in particular, like when you're first starting out, and like because it's just like any other professional sport too, where you start out and you're literally just not making money. Like you just don't make any money. You are impoverished for the most part. And obviously that should be an argument for like greater, support in tier 2, but financially really it's like tough to even get those sort of initiatives going.
Yeah. Now, one individual who we didn't have on our list, and I'm just going to kind of sneak him in here because we have a little bit extra time, but the Dallas Fuel picked up a new main support as well in the form of Paintbrush from the Los Angeles Gladiators. Now, the rumors were that they were going to pick up an individual by the name of Unique, another person who I didn't know existed. So hopefully you can help fill us in on who that guy is.
Unique, I believe, was Element Mystic.
That sounds right. I know that because I looked up his Liquipedia
Mystic page. Main support, I believe. Was it because the MCD used to be their other support? I believe it was either main support or flex support. I can't remember. Unique is pretty good though. I remember watching him in Korean Contenders especially when they won their first Korean Contenders title, and for Element Mystic, I believe it was Unique that was their main support then, and he was pretty good. So, but I'm honestly having trouble remembering exactly what role he played right now. But overall, I would say it was an interesting addition, but Paintbrush is a far more interesting addition to me, simply because it seems odd to me at face value, and of what weaknesses are shored up by adding Paintbrush.
It is an interesting one. Now, of course, despite us working in the same office, well, I suppose technically we don't work in the same office since we're all under lockdown still.
Yeah, we're all separate.
Classic conflict of interest disclaimer. We don't actually know the inside story, so it's not like we're pretending to lie to you about not knowing these things. Paintbrush is a guy who I would be consider like really good positive mental attitude, kind of shot caller, leadership type figure. But in my head, they already had that with Gamsu. So picking him up where I don't even think that, at least from what I can tell, Closer hasn't been the greatest main support in the league, but I still think he's a pretty good one. And I don't think that a lot of people would have argued or will argue that Paintbrush is a one-for-one mechanical upgrade to Closer as a main support. So like, the main things that I would attribute to Paintbrush as being his strengths as a main support player, I think that they already have in Gamsu, which makes that interesting. So the only kind of other thing that I could think about is maybe they're giving Crimzo an English-speaking partner. Closer's English is...
But Closer, I remember talking to Closer not that long ago in the office, and I felt like his English was pretty good.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world.
I felt like it was pretty solid, honestly. Closer, when I first heard it, I thought actually had like granted, this has been so long now, but I thought when I heard Closer speak, I was like, damn, like Closer has like equivalent English to Gamsu, who is very fluent. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think his conversational English is pretty good, but there's an entirely different
a skill set with like using in-game English, right? Yeah. That makes sense. That is an actual good point there, is that maybe Closer struggles in game with English as opposed to out of game, which is valid.
Especially you can have the kind of call outs where you say one thing. What was the word that Houston Outlaws came up with? Did they use like Texas Hard or some other
for their motto?
No, when they had a word assigned where when they said that word, a certain action happened in game. Chat will remember what I'm talking about, right? They had like a trigger word.
For who? What? I don't remember this story.
So the Houston Outlaws, in one of their like open comms episodes, they showed that they said one word like post fight or mid fight or something that signifies what they it was like some sort of call out. But it's in the same way of like rotate or transition or something, where you say one word that holds like a tactical or strategic instruction within it, so that regardless of what language the players speak, it's been briefed where like when this word is said, you act in this way. But
Texas. Apparently the word Texas, when everyone should go to point/payload, was the regroup word.
Yeah, that's the one. Was it okay? I guess they were just really super uncreative. But yeah, like Texas is one of the words that the Dallas Fuel used in that. Back when the Korean players who are on the Dallas Fuel, they get English lessons. They have improved at English quite a bit since the very first stage of last year. Remember that one of the words that we had to come up with was maneuver. If we said maneuver as opposed to like transition or rotate, what that meant is kind of like flipping the board. So if you're talking like Route 66, if it was playing goats, a maneuver would be where you go up the ramp and you flip the attacker and defender position. So if you said that in the comms, the Korean players and the English players, everyone was on the same page what a maneuver meant. So there's a lot of things where when you are in like a multilingual team, more of your tactics and strategies are relied upon to be pre-decided, and then you can kind of just like communicate based on these like chosen action words. But trying to improvise a strategy, like if something needs to be developed in real time, like you scouted wrong, your analysis was wrong, the opponent is doing something different, none of your plans working, you're trying to like improvise really complicated plans middle of the fight, like that's stuff where you really truly need to be fluent, and everyone needs to be fluent in the language, or else the communication just is not going to happen.
Yeah. So Well, go on, Jane. What were you gonna say?
I don't know if that's the case with the Dallas Fuel, but the Paintbrush pickup is not immediately obvious as to the reasons why they're doing it.
Yeah, and also I think that we haven't seen too much of Paintbrush play, right? Paintbrush had pretty high reviews coming out of contenders. On his time at Mayhem Academy in particular, he was pretty good. I do think, and everyone has walked away saying Paintbrush. I mean, apparently Paintbrush did. I mean, that's why Paintbrush picked up for the Gladiators, even though Goose, who was considered at points to be, is still considered to be one of the best Western main supports and one of the better main supports in the league. Even with Gladiators sort of dipping performance, is, to have a backup with Paintbrush shows that there is the possibility that maybe Paintbrush was going to play. Because generally, DPay, I think,
Paintbrush did play.
Yeah, he did. He played one. He played like one match.
Yes,
but like. Yeah. And it wasn't the greatest because they played a lot of mercy.
It didn't go great.
But overall, like we haven't seen Paintbrush play a lot in Overwatch League, and with DPay as a coach, as from my note of him, and also as technically he's like a coach / sort of GM at the same time for the Gladiators, is he does like to rotate players when possible and give playtime, and that's part of his strategy. So he was clearly anticipating probably playing Paintbrush. Look, say that like 12 100 times in a row, but like playing paintbrush a little bit more. So there's probably some potential there. We've seen some of it in contenders with Mayhem Academy, that rest in peace. And maybe that, I personally, I think if you want to, my personal guess is like at least partially is that the visa, not needing to get a visa is always a very important thing.
Yes, that is big. That is big.
Not having to get a visa is always a very valuable component of any team in the Overwatch League. So maybe there could have been some logistical issues with Unique. Obviously, do not know for certain. I have honestly no idea, but it is something that can take into effect there. But I also have to say that I feel like there's really much an anti-closer sentiment that has started happening. And I really don't think closer's that bad, you know? Like
there's sometimes these like narratives develop that it's just like, what? But
I really don't get where the closer sentiment of like closer is the issue with the fuel. It's like, how is closer the issue with the fuel? Do I think closer's like the best main support in the league? No, not really. Like, sure, I don't. But it's really weird to me that closer has been narrowed in as like the issue with the fuel, when I really feel like that is not the problem at all.
I feel like it's like process of elimination. No, fans don't know what's going wrong, so they just decide to like pick things and be like, it's that thing's fault. You know, it's obviously not the DPS. Crimzo has been performing extremely well, so it's not Crimzo's fault. You know, Gamsu and Note respectively have their very fervent fan bases for them, and despite how good of a player Closer is, he doesn't really have a passionate individual following. So I just don't think that there's a large enough group of people who defend Closer the way that he probably deserves it. So I feel like it's just a matter of people just be like trying to find a very easily explanation as to why the Fuel's not winning more games. And they're like, Closer.
It's the K's fault, of course. It's the K's fault.
Of course.
Definitely the K. I mean, once again, this is not me going overboard and saying like Closer's really good. I think Closer definitely hasn't been like necessarily a top main support this season. I don't think pretty much any of the roles on Dallas outside really of Decay have shown like true top tier performance.
I agree. Like, even Doha, like, you know.
No, Doha has struggled because also Doha hasn't really been playing that much of his signature hero. He still had good moments, but really he's much more known for like the
especially with the Echo plays, like his Echo performance was significantly lagging behind the, you know, it's hard to compare him league-wide, but against the opponents that the Fuel has faced, Doha's Echo has struggled. So, you know, previously it was like, you know, the Dallas Fuel DPS has been crazy. And like, yes, that was the case. But, you know, recently it's been like Decay, wham. But, you know, even Doha, I do feel like, I don't want to say below average, but not at the level that you would expect from somebody like Doha.
And also just not what you need still. Like, it's great if Doha comes out and plays pretty well on a couple of heroes and plays decently on several others, and then plays poorly on others. Like, but you need a consistent performance that is really good all the time to be at the top level. You know, you need your DPS if you want to be competing for a top position, like top 5 to even 6. Like, your DPS always have to be consistently good on everything they're playing. And that's really where the Fuel has problems, is like, really their DPS lineup, sure, can they cover the majority of the roles, but they're not great on every role. And Doha's performance in particular on certain roles lags behind some of the leagues, and Decay, they've just given up on playing certain heroes and just put them on others. And then just the overall strength of the roster compared to some of the others. Like, I do think that with some greater cohesion, we can see that come to the fore a lot more. We can see Dallas be better with more time. But it's just a weird narrative that Closer is the one of all the people to focus on, because I really haven't felt like he's been some huge, unbelievable problem for the Fuel. And also and then somehow that paintbrush is in any way a solution to these issues.
The savior.
So, like, Closer literally has championship experience with the London Spitfire, and like, you know, long time. Like, it seems odd to me that this is like the narrative that has started moving forward, and also odd to me that this direction that has been taken with paintbrush. But maybe, you know, obviously we don't have the full inside scoop of like what Arrow and the coaches have been doing with right there, because we obviously haven't talked to Arrow, not even the office with Arrow, and right now to even get any sort of inside scoop, even if we wanted to. So I really don't know exactly what the direction going with that is, but paintbrush has shown to have some sort of a lot of, I guess, ability.
Also, you know, with the fact that the Dallas Fuel now have 5 support players on their roster, you know, they have Harry Hook, Unco, Closer, Crimzo, and now Paintbrush. This screams to me that they would not pick up Paintbrush unless they planned to play him.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to have to wait long for answers. You know, I definitely.
Now, that hasn't stopped the Fuel before, I will say. That hasn't stopped the Fuel before.
Fair. Well, I would say logic dictates, but logic has not always dictated the Fuel. So, yeah, we'll see. I would predict in my infinite wisdom that we will probably see Paintbrush play this weekend, and we'll talk more about it next week. But speaking of next week, we need a question that people can use to submit into our mailbag, because we have just passed the hour marker.
Oh, we have.
Is happening this evening. Today's episode went fast.
It would, but there was a lot of good stuff to talk about today. Obviously, we have games this weekend, and to next week we return to a 2-episode style format again, because now the league is back, so we can finally do more episodes, because otherwise we're just going to be sitting there scatting and dancing back and forth. There's not enough content to really go over.
Beatboxing, rapping, that's
so. We are going back to 2 episodes a week starting next week, since the games are back this weekend. Hooray! But we do have to pick what we want the viewers to weigh in on. I think we can even have a dual one depending on what they want to answer, Jane. So I think you said that particularly, like, once again, the final thoughts of if you have any extra thoughts to add into the hero pool of like no hero pools in ranked versus the Overwatch League format. And then I also really want to know if you are an anti-closer in particular, or if you're a pro paintbrush, or really just any particular support player, like let's say Mandu as well for New York. I just want to hear your thoughts of why this addition or this subtraction of a player that is a main support from your roster will make the team better. Like, why do you think closer is not good? Why do you think paintbrush is the answer to closer?
Are you on hashtag club closer, or are you on hashtag team paintbrush?
That's good hashtags. We can get those trending pretty quickly. It's a great
social media maven over here.
An influencer at his peak, right? An influencer at his peak. But I think that will be just any of those supports, like you said. Like, it really doesn't even have to be main supports. I just want to hear, like, what are some support lineup changes, if any? It doesn't just have to be only be closer and paintbrush. And then obviously final thoughts on hero pools, because hopefully we don't change them again.
Yeah.
Hopefully no more changes.
And if you had the Dallas Fuel pick up your choice of 6 support, could they beat the Washington Justice? Find out next time.
Find out next time. But I believe that has been us. That has been the full episode of Contested. If you want to watch Off the Break, it is going to be right after this with Lando. And then we're returning, obviously, to the 2-episode format next week, since the games are going to be back. But that has been Contested. I'm Avast. This is Jane. Thanks for watching.